Hey there, EB here on the Anything But Blam weekly update. It's Thursday instead of Friday. Thought I'd catch it real early. Obviously, what's in the news every day now, and what's on everybody's mind is the Israeli-Iran conflict and whether the United States will get pulled in. I am, for the first time, I think that President Trump is doing the right thing in supporting Israel both publicly and probably behind the scenes, and taking a long time to make a decision on whether the United States will provide its buster bombs for the bunkers to be able to get deep into the underground to get to the uranium pool that Iran has in some of their nuclear facilities. Israel does not have the capacity, doesn't have the bomb. The bomb weighs about 30,000 pounds, and it takes a special kind of airplane to transport it. I think that what Israel's done has just been absolutely amazing in how they have weakened Iran. They have total domination and control of the skies. They've obviously taken out a lot of military facilities and strategic facilities for the Iranian government. I don't think that they should take out the Ayatollah, even though that I think that would be good, because I think that would create a type of religious war situation. And I really do think that President Trump is being cautious. I know everybody calls him Taco. Trump always chickens out. There's a real split amongst the Republican Party, and I'll talk about that on whether the United States should bomb Iran. I think that if we did, we would get pulled into a potentially broader war, and I would really worry about all of the terrorist cells and different proxies around the world and what they would do to United States interests, whether it's attacking embassies or governmental buildings or synagogues. Right now, there's no question Trump is using the word "we" when he's talking about Israel. We have control of the skies, we've done this. But the United States, I do not believe, is running the war campaign. That is clearly by Bibi Netanyahu. What he has done, and I don't like him as a person. I don't like the corruption that he's done, but he has certainly taken out Hamas, he's taken out Hezbollah, and he's really shown that Iran is a paper tiger right now. Iran has spent so much money on proxies, whether it's the Houthis, Hezbollah, or Hamas, to fight Israel and the Western interests, that they really haven't done a lot in their own country, and the sanctions have really hurt. They've relied on the sale of oil for their revenue, and there's a lot of Iranian people that I'm sure would like a regime change, but regime change is often complicated. We saw what happened when we got rid of Saddam Hussein, and how do you take over a country? What do you do? Certainly in Gaza, we're seeing what can happen if Hamas is no longer the leadership there, and who's going to take over. It's clear that Iran is, like Russia, is a generation behind in their air force, their rockets, their missiles. They're just getting obliterated by Israel, and Israel, flies 100 sorties a day without any interruption or anything being shot at. So the main thing for me is that there's a real silence on the Arab countries who don't seem to be coming to Iran's aid, or don't seem to be saying to Israel, okay, you've done enough, stop, let's get back to the table. Certainly they couldn't be trusted. Trump gave them 60 days to come up with a nuclear deal. They did not do it, and almost on the 60th day, that's when Israel did their bombing. What I find interesting is there's this split of authority. There's those that say that Iran was a couple weeks away from enriching uranium and being able to put it in a bomb, and the question is whether they could transport it. But there's a lot of people in our government and around the world who said that they were years and years away. For instance, Tulsi Gabbard. The real criticism of pointing Tulsi Gabbard to the Director of National Intelligence was that she has affinity and empathy for a lot of these Middle Eastern countries, Syria, Iran, and certainly Russia, where she feels that we should be more considerate of their interests. One thing that she said, in addition to the weird nuclear holocaust video that she did last week that was 3 minutes long, she said this week that Iran is so far away from the developing a nuclear weapon, and Trump heard that and said she's out of her mind, she's wrong, she doesn't know what she's talking about. And from what I understand, she's now sidelined in the national intelligence community, and the question is going to be, how long is she going to be able to stay in her job before Trump just says, look, you need to move on? So I think she'll be one of the first cabinet members to go. She's certainly not participating in any of the decision-making process. The other interesting thing is that the Republicans themselves are divided. You have the MAGA part of the party that says, look, it's America first. Interesting, when they asked Trump, you ran on that it's America first, we're not going to get involved in these faraway wars that don't seem to have a direct interest on the United States. And Trump's answer was, well, I'm the one who decides what's America first. I thought that was interesting. But the MAGA party does not want President Trump to authorize the drop of these big bombs or get the United States involved in any way, unless a United States life is taken, or Iran launches rockets or bombs or does something against United States property or army bases. But the MAGA group says don't do it. Then you have the neocons of the Republican Party that, frankly, that's what I am. The old type of Dick Cheney, the old, guard, Bob Dole part of the party, Lindsey Graham, that type of the party who believes that, we need to be bullish when it comes to attacking our enemies and get to them before they come to us. And if we can do some kind of bombing that would give the people the right to rise up and speak their mind, Iran's been a particular big problem for many of the Middle Eastern countries. If you notice, Lebanon has a really neat president, and well as Syria, they have sat silently while Israel is just decimating Iran. So, the neocons feel like that the United States needs to get involved. We need to exert our influence throughout the world. Trump said that he would permit Putin to negotiate a peace between Israel and Iran. It's ironic that Putin is criticizing Israel for going into Iran unprovoked, and that's exactly what he's done since 2014, when he started in Crimea and then went into the rest of Ukraine in 2022. There's people in the Republican Party that are calling those in the Republican Party who want Trump to bomb Iran war pimps. So, it's really, really interesting to see the whole thing. If you saw the discussion between Tucker Carlson and Senator Ted Cruz, it was really interesting. It was one of the most aggressive interviews I've ever seen, where Carlson was questioning Ted Cruz, who said he believes that Israel should bomb the nuts off of Iran and the United States should give them the bunker busting bombs. He started asking them the questions, how many people are in Iran? Ted Cruz didn't know. It's 95 million people. What are they predominantly made of? Ted Cruz said, Persians and Shia. And Tucker Carlson started mocking him, saying, you're a United States senator who's calling for regime change, and yet you know nothing about the country. So it shows the split in the Republican Party, where the MAGA is kind of aligned with the Democrats, who don't want another war and don't want Trump to bomb Afghanistan. And it's really only the neocons, the John McCain wing of the party, who want the United States to eliminate Iran's nuclear arsenal and nuclear capability once and for all. Israel did it in 1981 with Iraq. They are obviously highly skilled at what they do. The Mossad is incredible to get inside of Iran and be able to do what they did. So we're seeing a lot domestically that is interesting. You know, last week when President Trump had the military honor for the 250th anniversary, and then also for his birthday, there was the No King rallies in pretty much every major city across the country with significant turnout. And I think we're starting to see a little bit of people concerned to say, hey, where are we moving as a country? What are we doing? Are we really a three-headed government at this point, or are we more of an executive branch that the other two branches, the judicial and legislative, are subservient to? You know, I think what the Ayatollah wants to do is scare Israel and the rest of the world that something's going to happen. You know, he said that I'm going to do something that they'll talk about for centuries. Now, to me, you know, yesterday they bombed the largest hospital in Israel that has 1,000 beds, and they did a nice job on the top of that hospital. And I think a couple people died, which is, you know, a couple people too many, and many were injured. I think the Ayatollah is going to do something with chemical weapons or some kind of coordinated attack on the United States and Israeli interests around the world if this doesn't cool down. You know, Trump said that you know, he's the one that will control on what will happen to Iran, and he's going to either say there's going to be negotiations or it's going to have to be an unconditional surrender. I think he is mindful that there were 2 assassination attempts on his life that they believe originated in Iran. So that's one of the things that will be interesting to follow. You know, he wants a deal with Iran. When they had a deal and it was canceled in 2017 at the behest of a lot of the Republican Party, they already had an Iran nuclear deal. And so it's going to be interesting to see what kind of deal can be crafted. I think this will get them back to the table. The fact that Iranians see the superior air power and military power of Israel. We want peace. I don't think we want another long drawn out war. I certainly don't. So I do commend President Trump for being cautious and getting information from his national security team and not making a hasty decision. The Democrats are a lost party right now. They're not being able to assert themselves as leaders on this issue. There's 3 S's that the Democratic Party needs to focus on. If you look at some of these governor races in New Jersey as well as in Virginia, there's women who are running that have military backgrounds that are very sharp, and they're focusing on the 3 S, and that is safety, schools, and shopping. That's what concerns everybody. Are we safe? What are our schools like for our children? And when we go to shop, are we being bombarded with inflation and high costs and less product for more money? So I think if the Democrats start focusing more on those local issues, they may get some of their party back. You know, Iranians are weak because I think that they have had this mystique that they are far more advanced militarily than they really are. You have the Revolutionary Guard that you know, everybody was always scared of. Israel has taken out 13 generals now, has taken out 9 nuclear scientists. There's really nothing left of their upper echelon leadership, both in the science industries for the nuclear capability as well as militarily. Marjorie Taylor Greene is also another one who is advocating that President Trump not bomb Iran and only worry about the interests of the United States. The Supreme Court this week upheld a Tennessee ban on procedures for transgender minors. I totally agree with that. I really worry whether kids, even at 15, 16, and 17 years old, have the wherewithal to understand. Hey, Deborah Stanley says hello. I really have a concern whether kids in the 16 years old have the capability of understanding changing their identity and their gender identity medically, whether what are the really long-term repercussions for that. Right now the Republicans are trying to seek a record debt limit increase of $5 trillion. I mean, it's like we're in an upside down world. The Republicans used to scream, let's keep that debt ceiling on, let's not run up the debt, and now both parties are just absolutely spendthrifts. They don't care about debt. They don't care about deficit. It is extraordinary to me. Trump announced he's yo-yoing back and forth. Remember, he was getting a lot of heat from the restaurant, the hospitality industry, and the farmers and the agriculture industry because they were rounding up too many workers. And everybody started screaming, aren't you going to get back to rounding up criminals? So then he said, okay, I'm not going to round them up. And then a lot of the people who are pro for immigration deportation said, you better round up these people. So now he's decided that he's going to go into democratic cities, sanctuary cities, whether it's LA, Chicago, New York, Philadelphia, Atlanta, all these different cities that are sanctuary cities. Not in Texas, where there's a ton of illegal, undocumented immigrants. He's going to go in these cities and take and deport all of the illegal immigrants away, which is, targeting Democratic strongholds. So the Minnesota shootings, I just can't even begin to tell you how much it has affected me that, women and men who give their time and to public service and do nothing but live a law-abiding life could answer a door and some whacked out sicko opens fire and shoots at a husband and wife, and then they died, and then he shot at another one, and they lived, but they were shot, and that there was a kill list of like 70 people on there. I don't know what is happening to our country that we are becoming like this. We talk about that the rhetoric is hot, and we just got to stop this indiscriminate killing of gone to schools or in malls, people who are totally innocent, and you're killing them because you have a different gripe on different people. So maybe you hate Group A over here, but you're going to kill Group B because you want to send a message to Group A. It really makes no sense to me. Senator Mike Lee from Utah, he's a former Supreme Court clerk, pretty serious guy. He even said, in 2016, he said how gross and disrespectful and amoral Donald Trump was, and he would never vote for him. And now all of a sudden, after the shootings, he started sending out tweets mocking the Democrats and mocking the people that were shot. 2 kids were without their father on Father's Day after those killings last week. And does he think this is the best use of his time during a tragedy to mock these people? The Nippon U.S. Steel deal was finally consummated of $14.9 billion. That's a tremendous coup for President Trump. He was against it, and now there's some concessions about how the United States management will still control the steel company. So I do think that was another good thing for President Trump. There's a new EPA edict out there that says not to enforce environmental laws against fossil fuel companies that may be in violation of environmental laws. I mean, let's say that again. The EPA has put out an edict to tell local law enforcers and other EPA enforcers not to bring charges, not to do consent decrees, do nothing against fossil fuel and energy companies that may be polluting the environment. The Karen Reed trial, we had a verdict yesterday. It's after 8 weeks. The jury deliberated for 3.5 days. I talked about it on Court TV this morning. You know, the first trial, the defense team, led by Alan Jackson, who's a tremendous lawyer. By the way, she's racked up $5 million in legal fees. She raised $1 million through, I guess, a charity, through charity yesterday. But obviously, there's going to be, you know, a book and TV and movies and yada yada yada. But in the first trial, they focused on the government corruption, on the investigation, on the lead investigator who said some incredibly heinous things about Karen Reed, that he used the C word, she suffered from Crohn's disease, he wished that she was dead, and all kinds of things. But in the second trial, the defense team focused on creating reasonable doubt for the debris site on where John O'Keefe, the officer, was struck, and showed that the Albert fellow where the property was where John O'Keefe was found didn't even come outside when the first responders were there with all the blue lights, that there was possibly a dog bite on Officer O'Keefe, and that didn't happen as a result of being hit with the car. And there was this worst snowstorm in like the history of Massachusetts. So there was a confluence of events, and it turned out that there was reasonable doubt. The government has spent a fortune of money, and right now there's going to be civil suits, obviously, because the burden of proof is, in a civil suit, a preponderance of evidence, which means more likely than not, as opposed to the more strict standard of beyond a reasonable doubt. And you remember in the OJ case, he was held not guilty of murder, but he was found civilly liable for wrongful death. It's going to be interesting to see whether Karen Reed does her own trial for 1983 abuse by the government, as well as malicious prosecution. The Colucci trial in South Carolina was the oldest murder case in our state's history that has not tried yet, and it went to trial this week. And before the trial, it was dismissed based on the prosecutors not disclosing what's known as Brady material, which is exculpatory material that should have been provided to the defense. And in 2015, when Mike Colucci's wife was killed and died, evidently she made a statement to her mother a week or two before the death that she was going to commit suicide. And that is a statement that was not provided to the defense. The prosecutor knew it. The prosecutor was put on the stand, and her name was Megan, begins with a B, her last name. She was certainly not pleasant. She was sarcastic. She was abusive in her answers. The judge admonished her, almost held her in contempt. And then Judge Young, who is a tremendous judge, very smart, held that there was such prosecutorial misconduct, and misconduct by the SLED officer, David Owen, at the time, who's now retired. He was also involved in the Murdaugh case, that was not disclosed to the defense, and that as a result, the defense was prejudiced, and that the murder charges were dismissed. RFK has done a complete across the board as the head of HHS, cleaning out all of the committees that are pro-vaccination for children and people. He summarily fired the entire CDC vaccination committee, and that's something that we should really be concerned about if we're going to stop vaccinating our children. JJ Spawn won the US Open at Oakmont last week. It was who was going to survive the onslaught of rain and just the most difficult golf course out there. Oakmont is rated one of the 8th hardest courses in the world. It's fun to see pros struggle, and the winning score is above par. A lot of golfers missed the cut at 12 over, 14 over. JJ Spawn is 34 years old. He's a grinder. He's won earlier this year. So it was really a tough test of golf. The U.S. Open is the toughest test of golf because they narrow the fairways, they grow the rough up, the greens are faster than concrete. So that was interesting. Shohei Ohtani is the fastest player in baseball history to hit 250 home runs. Faster than Ruth, faster than Mays, faster than Aaron, faster than Alex Rodriguez, and faster than Barry Bonds. It's just, he is the modern day Babe Ruth, and he continues to amaze us. He's going to start pitching in July, so that he's a two-way player. The Lakers yesterday sold for $10 billion. Let me say that again, $10 billion. Jerry Buss, Dr. Jerry Buss, bought the team in 1979 from Jack Kent Cooke for $65 million. His daughter's the president of the Lakers, and the gentleman who bought them also owns a piece of the Dodgers and many other sports teams. He's a hedge fund guy, and you're talking about one of the most iconic sports franchises in the world. That when you think about dominating family, you think about Yankees and the Steinbrenners, the Rooneys and the Pittsburgh Steelers, the Jones and the Cowboys. They are in the business of winning. They started with the Laker girls. They had the Jack Nicholson stars, and think about how the transition of players they've had. They've had Jerry West, Wilt Chamberlain. Then they went to Magic Johnson. Then Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Then they went to Shaq. Then they went to Kobe. Now they're with LeBron. It's just an iconic franchise. The Florida Panthers won the Stanley Cup brutally, beat the tar out of Edmonton Oilers. It's been since 1993 since a Canadian team won the Stanley Cup, which is extraordinary. And Connor McDavid will not be considered one of the greats until he can win a Stanley Cup. Florida was just overwhelming with their offense. Tonight we'll see whether OKC wins the National Basketball title. They're 3-2 over the Pacers. Indiana Pacers. If you're watching women's basketball, Caitlin Clark is getting the tar beat out of her every game. I don't understand it. I don't understand what the animus is and the malice is towards her. She's the best thing that has happened for women's basketball. She came back from an injury a couple weeks ago and had a triple-double, scored 33 points. She is amazing. I noticed this morning that the Baldini and the Blake Lively suit is going to heat up because the court gave permission for Baldini to subpoena all the text messages between Taylor Swift and Blake Lively. And I think that Taylor Swift is pretty PO'd at Blake Lively for that. Let's look at some questions from the listeners. On the Karen Reed trial, do I see this verdict as a legal triumph for the defense or prosecution's failure, or both? I see it as both. I think the prosecution didn't really have a good theory. There were some other potential targets of their investigation, whether it was the McCabe lady who did a search on how long it takes for someone to die before they, in the snow before they would die. The Albert friend who had some racy text messages with Karen Reed. So I think it's a failure of both. I already talked about how the defense created reasonable doubt all over that courtroom. There's a civil wrongful death suit pending, obviously. How do the standards of proof shift? Again, in a civil case, it's preponderance of the evidence, more likely than not. If you could see a football field, it would just be crossing the football over the 50-yard line. If you did that, you prove your case civilly. Beyond the reasonable doubt is like 99% sure, so you would have to get the football and take it all the way down, almost to the half-yard line. The P. Diddy trial is wrapping up. We heard some really heinous stuff this week. Lots of money testimony from financial accountants about how much money changed hands, how P. Diddy brought escorts across state line and used the wires. We saw a juror being dismissed this week. It's still 8 men and 4 women on that jury. Diddy is not going to testify. It would just open himself up to so much. I do not believe that in that case that he should get on the stand, because the cross-examination would be brutal. Brian Koberger, it seems like that there's a DoorDash driver as a new eyewitness, but her DUI is complicating her credibility. Should courts evaluate this testimony? Yeah, they should, but they let it in, and then it's up to the jury to weigh that testimony, whether it's credible or not. The defense has again cited intense media coverage to file for a delay of the trial. I don't think he should get it. It's gone on long enough. It's time. I've already talked about the Colucci trial, and so, you know, what we have here is just a powder keg going on in the world. We still have Hamas and Gaza, and people are starving there, and nobody's talking about that. We have Israel and Iran, and everybody's talking about that. Now we have Russia and Ukraine, and not many people are talking about that, and so Russia is bombing and bombing to get away with what not being in the news. On the home front, don't forget, we got the big, beautiful bill out there that's percolating through the Senate that is going to be reconciled with the House and the Senate in early July, that's going to affect Medicaid and Medicare. So stay involved, stay informed, and we'll talk next week. That's the end of the update. EB out.